Greetings, Reanimated fans. I'm H.A. Conrad coming to you from Brooklyn, along with my intrepid co host, who's coming to you from the West Coast. Hello, Stuart Tiffin.
Greetings and well met. Salutations.
Lots of news today to catch up on, but we'll be discussing the first episode of season 2 of Interview with the Vampire series on AMC.
So good.
Pretty psyched to chat about that with you today, Stuart. Yeah. But lots of weird. There's been a dearth of news, and now there's suddenly a lot. And I think that the big, not the big, but I mean, there's been news coming out about this all along. But the big announcement is that Cillian Murphy is confirmed to return as the role of Jim in 28 years later. And
I think their marketing plan, their marketing plan is to be like, we will release one tidbit of news a week until the movie comes out.
I think that's pretty much it. But this is a pretty good tidbit, and I'm psyched for it because he was definitely attached as executive producer, but there was a lot of teasing around whether he would actually return as Jim. They also say that this is a different view, or it's a role that will grow. I don't know what that means. I kind of thought Cillian Murphy was going to sort of be in his gym and they'd off him pretty quickly, or there would be flashbacks or something, because I wasn't sure how much of an appetite he had for returning to the full franchise, because they've got several films planned. But it sounds like it's semi-significant, but who knows? This is also part of the tease, right? And they're pretty artful in how they do it. And so, but I'll take it. I'll take him back as Jim. I'm psyched about that part.
Saying that it's a role that will grow, or a way that will, he's back in a surprising way, in a way that grows. I feel like then that kind of means that maybe he'll be almost a cameo in the first movie, and then we'll have expanded roles in the second or third.
Possibly, or he's a zombie that they just come back and experiment on, and his
A
role
surprising way. Yeah, it could be.
surprising way could mean a multitude of things.
Mhm.
But in any case, they have announced that it is going to be released, they think, in June of 2025, and they even gave a specific date, June 20th,
June
2020.
20th. If it hits that, that will be pretty incredible.
Yep,
But there's so much hype about this right now, so that it's, maybe they'll be able to do it.
maybe. And then speaking of films that have not been released or
Or hit their
anything,
dates. Yeah.
yeah, Salem's Lot, more news about that. I honestly don't even know what to say
This
about
is
that.
this is all speculation, but I'm just glad other people are out here in the world asking, like, so what happened to that movie? Where is it? Why isn't it out yet? And so there's an article on boundingintocomics.com that came out 9 days ago. And it's like, rumor, Salem's Lot remake delayed by heavy interference from Warner Brothers. And then they also have an embedded YouTube video from a channel called the Kingdom Movie Channel, and he's talking about an email he got, like, from a source that I don't think is with Warner Brothers or anybody who made the movie, but it seems to have information about the fact that it's going to be released on Max and not this month. And I don't think they really had anything else that was that
Well,
substantive.
I think we can just assume that Salem's Lot is cursed, maybe because it's Salem's Lot, and we just have
Maybe.
to roll with it, and maybe it'll come out, maybe it won't.
No,
But
I think, well, based on the speculative, this guy's YouTube video, he's like, look, they screened it to Max staff and they said it was good enough to release on Max. So
oh,
hopefully
I will believe it when I see it, and then we
that's
can
fair.
decide to review it if we think it's worth it. But we shall see. And then in other things that never got released or never got sort of made. There was apparently I remember this. It was Zombieland,
Yeah,
the show
we
that
talked about it on this podcast.
we talked about it, and I remember that. And it's weird that it's sort of like seeing the light of day or getting any kind of oxygen right now. But
Yeah, I feel like there's some sort of weird nostalgia for it, but then the article starts with nostalgia and ends with, yeah, it never should have been made.
yeah, it's like kind of okay, fine.
And
Um,
this was
and then,
the article's on Giant Freaking Robot.
yeah.
And I saw a couple of this headline like pop up a couple of times when I was searching around for news today. So it was kind of weird. But yeah, and like, do you remember? I don't know if anybody else remembers, but Amazon did this thing for a little while where they would put pilots for shows they were considering streaming up on Amazon Prime Video or whatever, during like 1 or 2 weeks of the year. I don't know if it was a sweeps thing or like the trailer season or whatever, and people would rate it to see if they liked it or not. And one of the pilots that they aired was Zombieland. I don't know, and I guess you and I both remember seeing that, and now the whole pilot is on YouTube, but it's in a terrible 240p, barely worth watching on a monitor. Like watch it on your phone.
But it's basically just rehashing the same thing. So
Yeah.
it really isn't like it was just kind of a tepid
Yeah, they just
attempt.
remade the movie.
Yeah, it
And
just
oops, the
didn't work.
movie was good. The movie was great. So if they wanted to do something like this, they should have come at it from a different angle. But
Right. Um, but in happier news, Zombieverse season 2 is gonna come out. They've announced the cast, and so that's interesting.
how
So,
far along are you in your Zombieverse season one viewing? Have you continued to
um,
watch it?
I did not finish it,
Yeah,
but
me
it doesn't
neither.
mean I won't come back to it.
I feel
So
like I'm like 2 or 3 episodes past where we
yeah,
were when we talked about it, where they went to like another village and
yep, that's about where I am.
shenanigans ensued. Um, and it's pretty funny because a couple of the cast members are quote unquote infected, and it's just funny to see how the show is going to continue to move that along. It's honestly it's still fun. It's just you have to pay attention because of the like
Subtitles.
yeah. But it's a pretty funny show.
And last but not least, another season 2 that I am very excited about. This all came out this week. But they released some stills from The Last of Us season 2, which is going to be coming out in 2025. And Pedro Pascal confirmed it, sharing the same stills on his Instagram account.
Yep.
And they also announced that Catherine O'Hara has joined the cast, but they didn't share the role that she's going to be in. And so pretty awesome news in my opinion. And the stills were cool. Pedro Pascal's sporting like some longer hair here and
Mhm.
looks all Pedro, so you know I'm psyched about it.
Bella
Um,
Ramsey looks exactly the same as they did
Same.
in
He
season
doesn't
one.
age at all, or they don't age at all, and that's just really you know that's on brand for the.
Well, the thing is, actually, I think I've mentioned this before. There are a couple of years that pass between The Last of Us Game One and The Last of Us Game Two, and Ellie goes from teen to young adult, like 1920. So she does in that part of the plot, she does actually change a little bit. She gets a little taller, a little more muscly. We'll have to see if Bella Ramsey follows along with that or not. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. It'll just be interesting to see if they try to. I mean, they can't make them taller, but they can maybe put them in a muscle shirt or something. I don't know.
We'll just have to deal with it as an audience. I'm sure they'll figure out some way to make her or them at least more mature.
Yeah.
So we'll see. And so looking forward to that. Lots of cool things coming up in the future. So the future's bright for our kind of content, which is exciting.
Very exciting. And we
And
also have Daryl Dixon. This isn't in news really, but Daryl
yeah,
Dixon season two is as expected to drop this summer.
yep.
And I don't know about Dead Island, but that's still, I mean, you're still seeing all these like local Massachusetts and whatnot newspapers announcing that zombies came to town again in, such and such town
I
because
think the
they're
most
still,
was from like Attleboro or something
yeah,
like
yeah, they
that.
had an A in the name. Where's that?
It's just, outside of Boston.
Okay, so they're
Um,
basically staying in the same areas of suburban Boston.
but yeah, so we'll definitely be looking at that when it actually gets released. But in the meantime, I am very excited. And I had to stop myself from watching the next episode. I think you'd had that experience as well, Stuart. But
Hmm.
Interview with the Vampire season 2 on AMC. So pretty psyched to talk about the first episode with you.
Yeah, and like there's a lot of differences between because they changed the time frame of the story they're telling.
Mhm.
That like you're in unexpected territory here, which is also part of the excitement that I have for it. That and the fact that I didn't refresh on season one, so I had a bit of a there's a bit of a like they kind of throw you right back into the story. I think you can. It's not too difficult to remember the high points, namely that Louis and Claudia, tried to kill off Lestat and get out from under his control at the end of season one, and that's kind and then and go looking for other vampires, and that's kind of the driving, the biggest driving forces, I think, for the story, starting with this new season.
Right. And in the books, they do this to try to like, they do look for vampires in different places. They change the timeline here, obviously, so that is a piece of this and changes, not really that much of the plot, but they tweak it a little bit. And then there's like the whole piece here where the vampire Armand was revealed at the end of the last season as being instead of the helpful um like butler or whatever his title was in for Louis. It turns out the vampire Armand is a couple with Louis and um you know it the subterfuge is there and there's a lot of missing pieces there, but now he's that secret is out. And they're continuing with the interview, so to speak.
Yeah, and
And
there was that revelation at the end of the first season where there were pages ripped out of Claudia's diary, and they had been kind of working through her diary to explore like her frame of mind, which is all very painful for Louis because she's dead. She has not survived into the present day, and I think that was clear in the first season two, right?
right.
You
And
and
um
so now they're like working through her ripped out pages is part of the conceit for this first episode and into the second one, I assume also.
right. And then there's also there's pieces that they're indicating that Louis' memory has some holes in it. So
Yeah,
there's
I kind of like this too. Like well, I mean, maybe it can get a little bit not saccharine, but like a little bit melodramatic. It seems sometimes when he's just like thanking Malloy for the opportunity to recount his story, and it like helps him jostle memories free.
right. And there is definitely some um antagonism between
Oh,
Malloy
dude,
and
Malloy is
he's
such a
just
dick. Like
yeah.
he's like, yeah, he seems to really despise Armand, even though he doesn't really know him, and he gives the guy that Armand was pretending to be, who he calls real Rashid, he gives him a bunch of he gives him a hard time constantly. It's
As if he had any choice of the matter, right?
yeah,
Uh,
like it feels kind of unkind more than just a little.
Daniel
And
Malloy, that's like kind of what he is, and he's there to get to the truth, I suppose. So there is like they intersperse the scenes with Louis and Claudia with kind of going back and filling in, and with a little bit of narrative with Malloy and with Louis and with
and
Armand.
Armand, yeah, and I like these scenes with Armand and Louis, especially when they're like having their private conversation after the first day of the interview in this episode. It kind of just drives the development of their relationship, how, you can get the sense that they actually really care for each other, that they
Right.
don't really, that it maybe don't trust Malloy, or at least certainly Armand doesn't. Louis, I don't know how he feels about Malloy
No,
necessarily.
but there's also, I mean, there's also definitely a bit of an unreliable narrative thing going on here, which is
Yeah, I that was an amazing part of the episode where Louis suddenly, like 5 minutes after a line has been delivered, he's like, "Wait, that's not how it went," and then he tells you how, and then they continue to play it forward. I thought that was really cool.
so you have a little bit of that. So that actually makes the audience question, what are we actually watching? Is this true? He does it in that one instance, but then it makes you question everything else you're seeing, and I'm sure that will come, I'm sure that will come full circle later.
Yeah, that's probably true.
And but the one like huge thing we should mention here is that Bailey Bass, who played Claudia in the first season, has not returned for the second season. There's an announcement at the beginning of the episode that basically Delaney Hales is the new Claudia. And it sounds like there may have been some like scheduling conflicts. It's tough to know. They were a little cryptic in how they announced this, just so there were a lot of unforeseen circumstances. But we do know that Bailey Bass was cast in the Avatar, the next, like, I think it's the next three films or so of the Avatar franchise. So there's a good chance that just scheduling wise, she wasn't able to make this work. But I will say that Delaney Hales is really excellent. So slightly different interpretation, but really amazing in this. And I really actually just the screen time that she gets and the whole dynamic between her and Louis and her character in general, she really takes this and runs with it. And so I don't, I know it's hard when they have to recast a main character like this. And I thought that Bailey Bass did an incredible job in the first season, but I guess if you have to do it, you find just another, you find another extraordinary actor.
Yep.
And I think Delaney Hales very much was up to the challenge here. So
She just yeah, there's a lot of close-ups of her face, and her face just is glowing. She has a great look. Even though she doesn't look exactly the same as Bailey Bat, like they're not gonna find two people who look identical. She's the right physicality for the role, and she gets to do some pretty cool stuff in this episode too. But yeah, I
and
think she's doing great.
she plays the I'm, because that's the whole thing about the role of Claudia. She definitely plays the fact that she is an older creature that has been living in this body that isn't, it's deceiving. And so she's in this like child's body or this like preteen's body that she is kind of forced to deal with. And so I thought that she did an amazing job with the mannerisms and affect and everything. And she's pretty badass in this too, overall. And she continues the whole Claudia like predator piece where she really has no and she's got a lot of not like a bit of disdain for Louis because she just goes and feeds and has no issue doing what she's doing. And Louis talks a little bit about that, just like she is absolutely um unflappable when it comes to taking down people, getting what she wants, and she really has a goal and she's not going to let anything stand in her way. Um,
There's a cool element to the relationship between Louis and Claudia that you see here and there, and it kind of goes. It's like a balance of authority almost. But there are some scenes where he's deferring to her, like where he's like, "Oh, do you think we should still be doing this?" I mean, in the scope of vampire lives, I forget how long they've both been vampires, but it's on the order of 30 years, maybe 20.
Something like
Um, yeah, so even though he's not that much older than her is what I'm getting at in IRL. Like he was only a vampire for a year or two before I feel like they made her
Mhm.
in New Orleans. And so they are kind of actually fairly close in age. And the older they get as vampires, that age difference means less and less. And so there is I don't know if you felt that there was any kind of deferring from Louis to Claudia in
Oh,
this
definitely.
episode.
I think she is the one pushing what they're doing, and he has been a little bit along for the ride.
Yeah.
He's the one that was convinced to, I mean, she's the one that came up with the plan to kill Lestat. And they are paying for that to some extent because they still have no idea about what, if there are other vampires in the world, if there are rules. And they are basically out there seeking other people or other vampires like them, which brings them into a pretty like in where else to look but to find the legends of Dracul and Vlad Drac all that kind of original like legend. That's the thing they're kind of trying to chase down and end up in Romania, and there's like a massive conflict going on. So it is interesting because they are in a pretty hostile situation that for most people would be scary, but for them, because they're vampires, they can navigate this better than most people.
I found myself forgetting how much they shouldn't really be scared, even though because like they're faced with like a Nazi checkpoint, and they're two people of African descent in World War II Europe at the beginning of the episode. And
Well,
you're like, oh my God, that's such a precarious situation.
Well, and the show doesn't shy away from that.
Yeah.
And the people at the checkpoint question it, and you can tell that they're like, had they been just regular human beings, nothing good would have happened here. And instead, they basically destroy the entire checkpoint and everybody who's there.
Yeah.
And so they play along, and Claudia specifically plays along only until she has to, and then she just destroys everybody in her path because they are in the way of what she wants to get.
Yeah.
And
And the Claudia character turns out to be kind of a what's the word for someone who speaks a lot of languages? Polyglot, or is that
yeah,
Uh, she she speaks like I think she speaks Romanian, Russian, and German and English, obviously, in this episode. And I will say her German, though accented, is pretty good for what she's trying to, for what she's doing. And so,
And
and
Louis gives a little bit of background with this and says that she tortures people or victims until she can learn enough of their languages and then kills them. And then after she has gained all the knowledge, the language knowledge that she thinks she needs, she no longer asks anymore. So she's just kind of like going through gaining skills, and just to help her get to her goal. And they really want to find other vampires. And which brings them to the town that most of this episode is based in, where they find, the townspeople basically hiding out in like kind of a bunker thing, but there's like crosses and garlic all over the place, and people.
let's talk about that scene real quick where they're walking down the street in this town. Obviously, it's nighttime, and there's like strings of garlic around windows and crucifixes in the doors. And the way that this scene is done, and I don't know if you were picking up on this, HA, but the way they switch between telepathy and out loud
Mhm.
speaking, it's like seamless. And so obviously they were shooting, they were, I don't know, acting, knowing that this was going to be filled in, but they're exchanging looks
Yep.
to with voiceover that we can hear, but they must not have been saying, or maybe somebody was playing it or something on the set and they weren't. I don't know how they do that in IRL movie magic, but it was so cool to me the way that they switched from telepathy to speaking out loud all in one shot, and then they were approached by two Soviet soldiers, and they have to go like back to out loud speaking, and I thought that was super cool. Did you notice that?
Oh yeah, I thought the editing was fantastic.
Yeah,
And I
the,
thought,
yeah.
and I can't, again, cannot say enough like how beautiful the filmmaking is here. It's beautiful. They do like the lighting, the editing, everything is the costuming. It's all really, um, it's done incredibly well and very, and it's seamless, as you said. So
Yeah, it was just really cool to see. Uh, what's the name of the actor who's playing Louis? He's phenomenal.
he is really, really good.
I just want to call him Grey Worm all the time, and I know
I
that's not his
know
real name.
it's good.
Jacob Anderson is the actor playing Louis. And so now, actually, with Jacob Anderson and Delaney Hales, two Brits playing these two characters with like New Orleans or Louisiana drawls, never ending impressiveness to me that actors can just kind of do these flawless accents.
I know.
But they're yeah. So that does come like 15 minutes into the episode where we've suddenly arrived in Romania, not suddenly, but we're in Romania, and now we meet Amelia, who was a hilarious character. I kind of wish that she had a longer run on this show, but I
Yeah.
don't know. What was your takeaway from Amelia?
I thought Amelia was fantastic. She's well, she is the one kind of keeping all of this together. She's no nonsense. She has the information that they're trying to gather, but I also think a very good example of how honestly, no matter what, and Louis even says it, human conflict is their problem, not it Claudia and he cannot get involved. Certainly they could have done something in the situation that they found themselves in at the end of this episode. But Amelia has been surviving in this conflict. Um,
She kind of saves them from those two soldiers. Not saves, obviously they don't need saving, but she yells at the Soviets until they let them go. Uh, um, which, yeah, and then she's just like, yeah, you should come with us. And then it turns out that all the people from the village and other, I don't know where they're all from, but nobody's living in their houses in this village. This village with the crucifixes and the garlic. They're all living in like a shelter in a factory, maybe. And when we get in there, it's suddenly bright and loud, and we meet other supporting characters like this guy Morgan, who is a very interesting character too. And I don't think that these are like going to be repeating or recurring characters. Amelia certainly isn't because she dies, or we don't see her die, but I'm pretty sure she's going to die. And Morgan is fascinating, and like what a well-developed character in a dozen lines of dialogue, and just really well acted. Well, maybe he will show up again. I don't know, but he's certainly alive by the end of the episode. And watching Louis and Claudia like navigate this situation where Claudia wants to, she is still being treated as a child. That has always been a point of frustration for her. But in this scene, Louis like, go play with the children because maybe you'll find something out. And it turns out that is actually good for them to in their search for information about why this town is so scared of what they could assume is a vampire correctly. And while he sits there and talks to Morgan and Amelia about, well, mostly it's like Morgan trying to like suss him out, and Morgan successfully being like, "You're the photo of your sister, wife." He's calling her his wife. Is on albumin. I thought that was a really cool detail that they just kind of trot out. He's like, that picture's at least 30 years old, which makes your wife 60 and your daughter impossible.
Yep.
Like, fantastic. That was just so cool.
A smart person seeing through the veil of what they're trying to present. And I mean, look, I think he doesn't know exactly what it is. He asks if he's like a communist, and Amelia tells him to kind of back down and all of that kind of thing. But he definitely senses that there's something off about them. And then we also have, it's kind of he goes, Louis tells Claudia to go and play with the other children, see what she can learn, and she's just like not even having it. Basically,
She
she goes,
pushes that kid. Yeah.
she really just like, all right, what are you? They're doing some creepy little nursery rhyme, and she's like, fine, I'll go out, and she does, and she's just doing what she's supposed to be doing, which is trying to figure out whether there's a vampire in the hood. And there is, although it's not exactly what she thinks it's going to be. And she does say, the one that she finds, she tries to use telepathy on him. And he's just clearly damaged and he looks terrible. And she just doesn't know what to make of that. But she does go back to tell Louis. And
Do
in
you
the
remember
meantime,
the reference to this zombie or revenant vampire in the books?
yeah, they do talk about it that there's these revenants that are not sentient essentially. They're like wild animals.
Yeah.
And it's
I,
not
I
clear.
I feel like it was like a throwaway paragraph maybe in the novels where they talked
Oh
about
no,
having gone to Romania.
they did, and they couldn't what they couldn't figure out is was there something different in the way they were made? Was this something different in the way they lived? And this is the whole thing about them trying to figure out what their existence means. Like, are they the only sort of types of vampires like them that are there? And Lestat had implied that there were other ones out there that were vicious and terrible, and Claudia even ran into one of them while she was out and about and on her own. And so, like, part of me is also wondering, okay, so you're out there and you're looking for these, like, wouldn't you be slightly more cautious if you did think that maybe, like, especially given her experience with um, the vampire who assaulted her, wouldn't you be a little bit more cautious in how you're going about your research? They seem very, not, I don't want to say trusting, but like, they just seem a little bit too out in the open about what they are. They immediately, she immediately tries to use telepathy on this vampire that is not necessarily on the same wavelength as her.
Full
Uh,
Foley effects for this thing too, as well as looking like a zombie or but not moving like one or looking like a, I don't know, monster from the Black Lagoon. It has like a cool audio effect of like you can hear it wheezing, but you're not sure if it's actually doing that out loud or through its mind.
right.
It sounds like an or like a weird like hand organ or something, you know. I thought that was super cool. But yeah, like she does reach out to it, and I don't know what language she's speaking to it in. I think it's Romanian. And she's like saying things like, "You probably shouldn't eat that guy. He's dead. It's not good for you."
Yep.
And gets thrown against a tree for her trouble, and her arm is like dislocated. And then she comes back and tells Louis like, "Daddy, I fell out of a tree."
I know.
That was good, and that came right after the line where Amelia Louis is dancing with Amelia, and she's like, What do you?" He says, "What do you see in that guy Morgan anyway?" And she goes, "He's got a big one down the pants." And I also loved that line a whole lot.
Yep.
Just kind of
Yeah.
endears you to Amelia. But Claudia finding that zombie revenant vampire as it kills a couple of Soviet soldiers in the woods, uh, and getting thrown against a tree. That's like night one. Then they go to sleep under the floor of the factory somewhere after having an argument because I forget what the nature of that argument was, other than she says every vampire I've ever met has been a complete asshole.
Right.
So forgive, like basically, I want to find the good one out there. And she accuses Louis of carrying around Lestat, like mentally or emotionally, which we've seen him have like visions of Lestat show up and tell him like I'm just waiting for you to be happy before I come and kill you and things like that, which is giving you a window into Louis's guilt and basically mental state, which is not great. So the two of them, she's really driven on this mission to find a vampire and is taking big risks, as you said, to find one. And it's yeah, it's kind of like super optimistic for her to think, yeah, this guy looks like someone I should approach after the experiences that she has had with other vampires, which have been almost all bad.
Right. Um, and things don't now end well for the humans that have shown them any kind of um kindness. And
Yeah,
so Amelia comes in with a wound to her neck, and there's like almost not like yes, kind of a mob scene because the villagers are like, we gotta take her out, we gotta cut her
cut
head
off
off.
her head. Yeah, and the
Um,
Soviets are also like, we got to shoot her. It's wild to see this like uh superstition kind of taking hold over this little wherever they are in Romania. I thought that was just like a cool thing to see because it's not for nothing. They actually do have a big problem in this town, or they did.
um, so they, and we see Louis, and there is a moment, and you can see that he probably does want to help, but he just makes this decision. And Claudia's immediately, when she sees what's happening, is immediately like, I'm out, and says to Louis, we can't get involved. And he looks for a minute and he listens for a minute, and Boyle is trying to like really get him to, um, you know, intervene. But he just then kind of backs away and gets out of there and says the same thing essentially that Claudia had, which is that these are human issues
Yep.
and they cannot get involved.
Hmm.
And
That's
so,
that's a callback to what Lestat was saying in season one when Louis was like, I want to open a restaurant or a club. And I feel like Lestat tried always to talk him out of that because it meant getting too involved in human affairs.
yep.
But now it feels like he's taken that lesson on because while he does like Amelia and I think he likes Morgan to some extent, he absolutely does just turn and walk away when things are looking increasingly bad for them.
Yep.
Yeah, so then they basically go out to the woods together. They're like, yeah, let's do this. And they they kill or like break a Russian soldier's leg and leave him in the woods to lure this vampire. And when it shows up, Louis has another great line, and this episode has a few of them. Uh, Claudia's like, "It's a vamp. See, it's a vampire, not a baboon," because he was trying to suggest to her that it could have been a baboon. She's like, "We're in Romania. What are you talking about?" And he goes, "No, I'm a vampire. That thing's a catfish with teeth, catfish with fangs, maybe." Hilarious line, and I was very happy.
Yep.
No,
Um,
you're like,
oh,
yes, I'm
it
also
was
very
hilarious.
happy.
It was hilarious and it did make me happy. And then it is kind of interesting to see Louis and Claudia's reaction when they get a better look at the weird revenant thing. Because it's like they're just trying to communicate and it's just yeah, like it's a really weird interaction. And then um I don't know how to say the name of this vampire that then appears, Daciana.
Yeah, I think that's it.
And again, a little too
But we
trusting.
don't know her name until 1 second before she throws herself in the fire at the end of the episode.
Like it's all this, they have like all this goodwill that they're trying to interact with this revenant, interact with her, it just all
Yeah.
goes all for naught. Um,
Yeah, like it's honestly like a super cool story wrapped up into this one character, Daciana, and you get a sense of that right before the end. But she shows up out of nowhere in the woods because I don't know why they're. I mean, she's protecting what she's calling her kid, which is this weird zombie vampire who can't talk and just screams and kills everything that moves and hits other vampires. So
yeah.
she shows up and is like beating up on Louis, and then the Revenant is beating up on Louis also, and then Claudia rips out its eyes. Did you watch the after show?
I did not.
they showed that scene, a lot of wire work with Delaney. They show her, she's doing the stunts like on wires, flying toward the stunt guy who's playing the Revenant, and how they did the eye rip. And it's a lot of practical effect. Like obviously, it's all almost all practical effects with green screen for the background, but super cool. But yeah, like a cool little action sequence, vampire on vampire action, and then at the end of it, Tatiana, although we don't know her name, crushes the head of the eyeless vampire. She's like, "How can he hunt without his eyes? I will." So she crushes his head with a rock and then walks slowly away. And so they're like, "I guess she wants us to follow." And so they do, and they find her house, which I mean, she's not living like someone who wants to live for long. Even though you get the sense that she's an old vampire based on some of the stories she's telling them later, she's she's not all there. She's definitely got a couple screws loose.
Yep. And she continues to try to make more vampires. That doesn't seem to be going well.
Yeah, what is the sense you got of she's like actively trying to turn a soldier into a vampire, and then she calls him like a tray of overcooked bread or something, and
And like
throws
burnt
and
bread, and then she kills him.
what
Um,
like
and
because it wasn't taking, or what do we?
it's hard to like. I just think it's turning them into whatever the Revenant type thing was. And again, not clear why that's happening, but Louis, having no information whatsoever, basically is like, we've tasted that the blood is bad. People are just sad. So,
Yeah, the sad blood here is not good for vampires. I'm like I kind of get that.
um, but in any case, they're all like hopeful. I don't know why they would be so hopeful because she is clearly, having some problems. And
Well, I mean, Claudia, it feels like does get through to her.
yeah,
If I was Claudia, I would also be like, oh, she told me her name. She like recognizes this skull that I pulled off of another vampire's coffin.
yeah.
Um, and she knows the guy's name and talks about how funny he was.
Mhm.
And she's like, yes, I will go with you across the ocean. We will become strong again, and we'll have a great time. And my children will join me. And then I was like, when she said that part, I was like, oh, I think all your kids are dead. And so that was a weird thing to say. And then I like almost immediately, she's like, my name's Daciana. Peace. Jumps in the fire.
Out. And then, they um they kind of decide to peace out of that area. Um and
Was that the
they're on
Venus de Milo that they're sitting next to in the back of that
that.
truck?
I think that's implied, yes.
Just
And
randomly next to one of the most famous sculptures in the world.
and again, I think it's to give a hint that they're going to Paris. Um and you know, Louis gives his whole speech to Claudia just about the fact that this isn't what they thought it was going to be, and it's true that everything is going wrong, but promises her that he won't end up in the fire and says that he'll keep her from doing that too, and that even if it turns out that they're the only two sort of vampires like them, that that's okay. Yet they're still searching again, a little bit to me out in the open, a little too indiscreet in how they're doing it, given these experiences. You would think that these would make them a little bit more cautious, but we'll see what happens in the next episode.
Well, I think they feel, I mean, the lack of caution could easily come from not having run into any other vampires except for those two wackos in Romania, like since they left the US. And it's been years, 2 years that they've been traveling looking for vampires and have found nothing. And do you remember how that the frat boy vampire found Claudia in season one was he could hear her telepathy
Right,
from a great distance away.
right.
And actually, Armand has a line in this episode where when they're about to start talking about Paris before Malloy tells him to shut up. He's like, "My coven could sense." So there's still this thing about like I don't know, it's like vampire sonar or something where some of them can detect Claudia and Louis. Louis and Claudia apparently have never been able to use this to their own benefit. They're only ever transmitting their location, which is kind of
Well,
unfortunate.
and that's the other thing is that, throughout this episode, and especially, Louis is seeing dreams or flashbacks of Lestat all the time. And even when he's talking to Claudia, Lestat is there and present with his throat cut. So he's like, there is again, the unreliable narrative question. narrator question is like, what is real, what is not? Is Louis saying all this to her about how he won't like go into madness, but there's some pretty good indicators that maybe he is.
Hmm.
And then there's also, when we flash back to modern day, some of the conversations between him and Armand. He asks Armand if he can see the pages that were ripped out of Claudia's journal, and Armand says, "Well, I'm in there." And the fact that Louis doesn't even know what's in those pages is really interesting. So I think, again, they're going to fill that in, I'm sure, later. But if you've read these books, you know that when they go to Paris, there is a lot of interaction with vampires and that things don't go very well. So
Yeah.
we'll see
Oh,
what they do here, but
yeah.
it
It'll
is
be
nice.
really interesting to see if they go the same direction with the Claudia character once they meet up with these theater of vampires kids.
Right. And we also, I mean, it is a nice transition from sort of the wilds of Romania to Paris, which is entirely different, a lot more on the type of ground that they are more familiar with, having come from New Orleans. They just, um, it's almost like they're back to civilization. So they're standing in the streets of Paris.
The
And
war's over.
yep, and that's where we are. We are in the sort of the beginning of their Paris adventures. So I'll admit I almost pushed play on the next episode, but I did not.
Such restraint, H.A. Conrad. Such
Did you have a
restraint.
similar feeling?
Oh, I was like, next episode, I could do that, and then I did not because I was like, nope, that would be cheating. And there's only 2 episodes currently available, so we have to,
It's ourselves.
pace ourselves, eat our vegetables. So we will come back and do episode 2 the next time we get together on Reanimated, and I couldn't be more happy to be back with this show. I think so far it's doing exactly the job I want it to do.
Yeah, it's really well done. It's a fantastic show, and obviously they have to tweak some things, and I'm okay with everything they've done. I think it makes sense with the narrative. But we will find out more in the next episode. I would love to hear what people think of it, what they think about the actor switch. But I think Delaney Hales was entirely successful, and she's an amazing actor. So I think if they had to do it, they couldn't have come up with a better person to step into those shoes.
Yeah. Yeah, those close-up shots of her face while he's giving her his hard words and soft words speech, which is
Yeah, we're
very,
amazing.
very well written speech. Her face just is yeah, incredible it's the way it's framed on the camera. It's a great
So,
show. So thank you for listening. Get with us again next time when we talk about more Interview with the Vampire Season 2. And in the meantime, you can let us know what you think. Send us an email at reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com. And you can hear our other episodes online at Podbean at reanimated.podbean.com.
indeed. Until next time, ciao.
Toodaloo.